Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We are on ayah number 229 of Surah Al-Baqarah. Let us continue بحول الله وقوته. قال الله تعالى: الطلاق مرتان فإمساك بمعروف أو تسريح بإحسان ولا يحل لكم أن تأخذوا مما آتيتموهن شيئا إلا أن يخافا ألا يقيما حدود الله فإن خفتم ألا يقيما حدود الله فلا جناح عليهما فيما افتدت به تلك حدود الله فلا تعتدوها ومن يتعد حدود الله فأولئك هم الظالمون. Okay, so some vocabulary. At-talaq has preceded, marratani, twice. The background of this ayah is that it used to be the case in Jahiliyyah that a man could divorce his wife and take her back, and do this ad infinitum. There was no upper limit, and this was obviously injurious to the wife, as the husband was obviously taking liberties with her. And so Allah Jalla wa Ala gives an upper limit, which is twice. That is, you can divorce her, take her back. You may divorce her again and take her back again. Then if you were to divorce her for the third time, you are not allowed to take her back. This is the rule. Then he says, فَإِمْسَاك, that is to say, you keep her or retain her, بِمَعْرُوف, on a reasonable basis, as determined by the customs and common sense. So that is to say, if you retain her, that is, take her back as a wife, then you must treat her well and live with her honorably. If you're not going to live with her honorably, then do not take her back. Or tasrih, from sarraha, yusarrihu, tasrihan, to let someone go. That is basically a kinaya for talaq. In another ayah he says, أو فارقوهن بمعروف, or separate with them on reasonable terms. So he does not use the word talaq, but this is what is referred to. And he says it is not allowed for you, meaning halal, to take back any of what you gave them, meaning the mahar, which is the bridal gift. So this is to say, when you divorce them, just because she is no longer your wife, you cannot say, oh, give me back the mahar. No, as long as the marriage is consummated, the mahar belongs to her fully, and that matter is done and dusted. It may also mean that you're not allowed to harm the wife, so she gives you back the mahar and releases herself. Then he goes on to say, except if they, meaning the husband and wife, fear that they will not be able to establish or uphold the hudud of Allah, the limits of Allah. What is referred to here are the rules and regulations that Allah has stipulated. So if both the parties feel that they will not be able to honor each other with proper treatment, then there is no problem. Janah means a sin, so there is no sin upon them, meaning both parties, fi maftadat bih, in that which she iftidat, from the verb iftada yaftadi, is where the word fidya comes from, which means ransom. So there's no problem with what the woman ransoms herself with. So this means giving back the mahar which she took from the husband. And this in the fiqhi books is called al-khula. So even though the woman cannot issue a divorce, that's in the hand of the husband, but she can end the marriage contract by giving back the mahar. And the husband is obliged to accept. He cannot say no. Though, having said that, it ought to be noted that such a thing ordinarily is haram, and there is a major threat against such an action if the woman ends the marriage without any genuine cause. But if there is a genuine cause, such that she simply dislikes the husband and feels they are not getting along with each other, or perhaps he is mistreating her, and perhaps she is being psychologically affected, which can happen in many marriages, then yes, she may give the fidya, which is her mahar, and free herself. Notice also how Allah says, فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ, if you fear. This is plural, which means that even family members of the husband or the wife could have this fear that these two, the husband and wife, are simply not going to get along with each other. There is more hatred than there is love. There is no harmony in this marriage, and that this particular marriage is not in the interest of either the husband or the wife or both. And in such a case, it is entirely possible that the family member of any one of these parties gives the ransom on behalf of the wife. And this is permissible if they do it for the benefit of the wife or even the benefit of the husband. But as for if somebody does it so that he himself could marry this woman now who is free from her first husband, then of course this is a selfish reason and is impermissible, because you're not allowed to break a marriage off for an improper reason. In fact, this is, as we discussed before, the practice of the magicians who break off the marital relations between a man and his wife. He says these are the hudud, the limits of Allah, meaning to say His rules and regulations, as this ayah is a fiqhi ayah, as are of course many other ayat in Surah Al-Baqarah. فَلَا تَعْتَدُوهَا, do not overstep them, meaning do not disobey the rules and regulation. And he says whoever oversteps the limits of Allah, then they are the al-zalimun, the wrongdoers. Zalimun from zulm, linguistically it means naqs, to give a shortfall or to decrease, because it is when you decrease or cut short the rights of other people, when you oppress them. But in disobeying Allah Jalla wa Ala, of course you're not oppressing Allah, that is impossible, but you are oppressing your own self. Anyway, let's reflect on this ayah. We take that Allah Jalla wa Ala looks after the rights of the wife and ensures that liberties are not taken with her. We take that there is a limit of 3 divorces, and at the 3rd divorce you're not allowed to take her back. As for why should it be the number 3 or the number 2 if you're looking at raj'i divorces, well, these are numbers that Allah stipulates, and that's just that. Now, even with the matter of divorce, we can have many talking points, such that what if he pronounces divorce 2 times in a row or even 3 times in one sitting? Does it count or does it not? All of these discussions are for the books of fiqh. Let us avoid it for the time being. We take the ruling from this ayah that if the husband is going to take her back, then he must take her back treating her well. If he wants to take her back and he wants to deprive her of her rights, then he's not allowed to take her back. On the other hand, if he wants to set her free from this marriage contract, then it is bi-ihsan, with goodness. And this is vital because the husband might think, well, I'm going to let her go anyway, and I may never see her again, and we are parting ways forever, so I may as well hurl a few abusive words towards her because, hey, what the heck, who cares? So we say, no, this is not permissible. Allah says, bi-ihsan. So you part ways on good, friendly terms, not hurling abuses at her and telling her how you hope that she gets divorced again and lives a miserable life. All of this is impermissible because Allah says, أَوْ تَسْرِيحٌ بِإِحْسَانٍ. Also notice the choice of words. When he's leaving her or setting her free, he uses the word ihsan, which is more emphatic than the word ma'ruf, which is used for when he's returning to her or keeping her back. So when you're setting her loose, you have to take more care and make an extra effort to be good to her. We also take the ruling that the husband is not allowed to take back his mahar. Now there are exceptions to this, which we'll come on to. We also take that al-khul' is permissible, which is where the wife gives back the mahar to the husband. Or we may also say gives back something of her wealth, whether it be less than or more than the mahar. Because the ayah does not specifically mention the mahar, so it is possible for us to say that any type of wealth can be given, which is deemed to be acceptable in the society. But this khul', we understand, must only take place if these people fear that they will not be able to give each other their due rights. In other words, it must be for a genuine need. So we ask the question, what if the wife is simply not attracted to the husband as in there is no physical attraction and chemistry that she feels between herself and her husband. Can she initiate the khulu'? Well, the answer is yes, she can, and we have a definite authentic evidence for this. The wife of Thabit ibn Qais ibn Shammas, who was the sister of Abdullah ibn Ubay, some say her name was Jamila, some say it was Habiba. There is a difference of opinion in this matter, but she wanted a khulu' simply because she did not like Thabit ibn Qais. One narration in the Sunan says that she came to the Prophet complaining that he is a man with the darkest of all skins, the shortest of heights, and the ugliest of faces. Now, of course, this may sound extremely acidic and harsh. However, the Prophet respected her personal preferences and asked her whether she is willing to give back the garden which Thabit gave her as a mahar. And she was even willing to give back a whole garden just to be free of him. And the Prophet accepted this. We find from this ayah that the Sharia opts for the lesser of the two harms and corruptions. So we know that you're not allowed to take back the mahar from the wife, that this is haram. However, in a case of khulu', you are allowed to take back the mahar. Now, why is that? Because if you do not take back the mahar and separate from the wife, this will lead to a greater corruption. And this is a general rule in the Sharia, is that if you have no choice, we have to opt for the lesser corruption. Okay, here's a question. Is the khulu' raj'i, meaning can the husband take back the wife after the khulu'? The answer is no, because the khulu' is not a divorce. It is a ransom. And so these are two different things. When the woman gives back the mahar as a ransom, she frees herself, so the husband has no right to take her back, as opposed to a divorce where the woman has not given anything to the husband. We may also take from this that the wife can do with her wealth as she pleases, because Allah gives her the choice to ransom herself by giving back the mahar. So she's dealing with her wealth as she sees fit, and she does not need the permission of the husband. And this is the case as long as the wife is of sound mind and is an adult. And we also learn that Allah has hudud, limits, which we are not to overstep. And if we overstep the limit, that is by committing the haram, then we are harming our own selves, as we would be the oppressors of our own selves. Ayah number 230. فَإِنْ طَلَّقَهَا فَلَا تَحِلُّ لَهُ مِنْ بَعْدُ حَتَّى تَنْكِحَ زَوْجًا غَيْرَهُ فَإِنْ طَلَّقَهَا فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا أَنْ يَتَرَاجَعَا إِنْ ظَنَّا أَنْ يُقِيمَا حُدُودَ اللَّهِ وَتِلْكَ حُدُودُ اللَّهِ يُبَيِّنُهَا لِقَوْمٍ يَعْلَمُونَ. So he says, فَإِنْ طَلَّقَهَا, then if he divorces her. This is referring to the third divorce. The previous ayah talked about the first two divorces, and this is talking about the third divorce. That's the irrevocable divorce. فَلَا تَحِلُّ لَهُ, then she is not halal for him, مِن بَعْدُ, after that, meaning after the third divorce, حَتَّى, until, تَنْكِحَ, she marries زَوْجًا غَيْرَهُ, a husband other than him, meaning other than the first husband. Technically, you cannot marry a husband. You're already married to a husband. But the zawj here is بِاعْتِبَارِ مَا سَيَكُونَ, with consideration to what will be the case. So this man she's marrying will be the husband. So that's just a little linguistic point. So this part of the ayah says that if she wants to get back with this first husband who has divorced her 3 times, she will not be able to do so, as it is not halal, until she marries a second man, and that marriage ends in a divorce. Now here again, as we have said before, the Quran is not enough for our guidance. We need guidance from the Sunnah. Because you see, this ayah, if we just take this on its own, would mean that she can enter into a marriage contract with a second man, and then the second man could divorce her, and then she could go back to the first husband. However, this is not the case, because from the ahadith we learn that the second marriage needs to be consummated, with frontal penetrative intercourse. Not only that, but we also learn that this second marriage must not be a ruse to make her halal for the first husband. Rather, this second marriage must be a genuine marriage. Remember, a marriage is for life, and this is the intention. So that must be the intention for the second marriage. It must be for life. Then if it so happens that it ends up in a divorce, without this being the intention, then yes, she is allowed to be married to the first husband again. So you see, it is actually extremely difficult to get married to that first husband, because there are too many barriers in between. Anyway, the ayah goes on, فَإِن طَلَّقَهَا, if he divorces her, meaning if the second husband divorces her, فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا, there is no sin on them both, meaning on the wife and the first husband, أَن يَتَرَاجَعَا, from raja'a, to return, that they should return back to each other. However, on the condition, in dhanna, if they believe. So dhann here would mean when you're above 50% sure but not 100%. So you think it more likely than not. So if they think it's more likely than not that they will yuqima hudud Allah, they will uphold the limits of Allah, then they may return back to each other in a new marriage contract. So the limits of Allah simply means that they will give each other the rights as husband and wife and live with each other honorably. وَتِلْكَ حُدُودُ اللَّهِ, again the same words are used. These are the limits of Allah, meaning His rules and regulations, the halal, the haram, and so on. And Allah yubayyinuha, makes bayan, makes clear to us His hudud, meaning His rules and regulations, for a people who know. Meaning these are the people who know the truth and they have iman in their heart, and when the knowledge comes to them, they will remember it and act upon it. As for the ignoramuses, then even if knowledge comes to them, they will either forget it or not act upon it. So it is the people of knowledge who will be benefited by these rules and regulations. Okay, so let's reflect on this ayah. We take that after the third divorce, the husband cannot just take the woman back. It is irrevocable, and that the only way to get back with the first husband is if she happens to be divorced after the second marriage. And remember the detail which we gave, and we said that this ayah is simply not enough for guidance. So anyone who says that we will just suffice ourselves with the Quran and we do not trust the Sunnah, then they cannot be properly guided. Impossible. And just in case somebody claims that tankiha means sexual intercourse, so it would read until she has sexual intercourse with another husband, then this is wrong. Nakaha does not mean to have sexual intercourse. If it is used to mean sexual intercourse, it means sexual intercourse with a woman specifically, not with a man. So in this ayah, it has to mean a marriage contract. If someone were to ask, why is it so difficult then for her to get back with the first husband in a new marriage contract, then we answer as follows. The fact that he has divorced his wife a total of 3 times means that they are just not made for each other. And it is better that they do not get back with each other, because there is something fundamentally wrong in their relationship. 1 or 2 divorces we can overlook, but the third one is way too much. From this ayah we find the extremely important condition for the woman to get back with her first husband, which is that both of them must believe that they will be able to start a new chapter and start afresh and treat each other honorably the way that Allah Jalla wa Ala demands, and that this second marriage of theirs will be nothing like that horrendous first marriage that ended up in 3 divorces. Of course, they can never be sure that this will happen. This is why the word dhann is used, that they believe it more likely than not. As for if one or both of the parties do not think that the second marriage will be vastly different to the first marriage, then it is impermissible for them to get back to each other, and they have to fear Allah Jalla wa Ala in regards to that. We also find that Allah makes plain His rules and regulations for a people who know, not for those who are ignorant, because it is the people who know who will understand and will know that this is from Allah Jalla wa Ala. It is a divine revelation. These are divine rules and they have to be followed. You do not expect the ignorant person to take these rules and regulations as divinely revealed. So you see, the kuffar will believe that these rules and regulations are just man-made. Why? Because they do not know what the truth is. They do not know the guidance from the misguidance. Also, an important point, if we take both of these ayat together, 229 and 230, then we may conclude that the khula is not a divorce. Just recap what has just happened. 229 talks about 2 divorces. Then it goes on to talking about the khula. Then in ayah 230, it begins فَإِن طَلَّقَهَا, if he divorces her, meaning the 3rd divorce. So you see, the khula is not a divorce, because if it were a divorce, then that means that Allah would have made mention of 4 divorces. And that would contradict the beginning of ayah 229, which says divorce is twice, meaning the revocable divorce is twice. So the 3rd divorce would be irrevocable. So if that's the case, then how is it that we are now talking about 4 divorces? So you see, the khula is not part of the divorce. So it means that if a man divorces his wife twice and takes her back twice, then it so happens later on that she makes khula. Okay, fine, he separates from her. He can then take her back in a new marriage contract if they both agree to it. Okay, that will also be fine. Then thereafter, if he divorces her again, this would be the 3rd divorce, the irrevocable one, the one where she would need to consummate marriage with a 2nd husband, if she is ever to get back with the 1st husband. Wallahu a'lam.